G'day guys, we've got an economics problem today where it's testing our knowledge of the economics principle of comparative advantage. The question shows a table below of the output of honey and fruit that can be produced in two countries, Thule and Agartha, when each of the countries devote 50% of their resources to the production of each product. Now the question is asking us to show how, despite Agartha having an absolute advantage in the production of both products, both countries can benefit from specialisation and trade when the terms of trade or the exchange rate of honey for fruit is 1-to-1. So guys, just before I get moving, if the video does help, please do me a favour and hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and if you think this video could help your friends, go ahead and share it with them. I'd really appreciate it. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is work out the production possibilities for both countries. We can do this by figuring out the maximum amount of each good that each country can produce when they devote 100% of their resources to its production. Now, because this table here shows the output when a country devotes 50% of its resources to each product, we can simply multiply the outputs that we have in this table by 2. Cool. So now that we have the production possibilities for both honey and fruit in Thule and Agartha, we have to then calculate the opportunity cost of production for each good. So let's start by working out the opportunity cost for the production of fruit in Thule. Now, opportunity cost is the cost of the next best item that you could do foregone. So for example, in Thule, we could make a maximum of 20 fruit or 40 honey. So it means that for every fruit, if we assume a linear opportunity cost, which is a pretty bad assumption to make, but if we assume a linear opportunity cost, for the production of every next item of fruit, we have to give up 2 items of honey because 40 is twice as big as 20. So let's start with the opportunity cost of fruit in Thule is going to be 2 units of honey. So let's go ahead and work out the opportunity cost of fruit in Agartha. So same method. We could either produce 160 fruit or 80 honey. So for every piece of fruit that I want to produce, I have to give up half a unit of honey production, or 0.5 units of honey. So it's quite easy to see that Agartha has the comparative advantage in the production of fruit. Why? Because it has the lowest opportunity cost, which means that it has to give up the least amount of honey production for every extra unit of fruit production. So moving on from that, the way that comparative advantage works is if one country has the comparative advantage in the production of one good, i.e. Agartha has the comparative advantage in the production of fruit, by definition, the other country must have a comparative advantage in the production of the other good. So, long story short, no country can have a comparative advantage in the production of both goods. You can have an absolute advantage in the production of both goods, but when comparing exclusively with one other country, if one country has the comparative advantage in one good, the other country must have the comparative advantage in the other good. Hence, Thule has the comparative advantage in the production of honey. So after we've determined which country has a comparative advantage in the production of each good, we can ask both Thule and Agartha to specialise in the production of the good that they have a comparative advantage. So we have Thule specialising in the production of honey, and Agartha specialising in the production of fruit. Now you'll see when you look at this table that although the global fruit production has increased from 90 to 160 after specialisation, the global production of honey has actually fallen. Now this is going to be due to the fact that Agartha has the absolute advantage in the production of both goods. Okay, so hopefully you're aware that for both countries to experience an increase in their material standards of living, we need the global production of both honey and fruit to either be maintained or increased. So although the global production of fruit has increased, the global production of honey has fallen, which means as a result, Agartha is going to have to produce some honey so to maintain or increase the global production of honey. So the easiest way of thinking about this situation is to try and create a scenario where the global production of honey is maintained. We do this because there are any number of honey production possibilities for Agartha which will increase global production, but only one singular production possibility which will maintain honey production at 60 units. So in order to take the global production of honey to 60, Agartha is going to have to produce 20 units itself. So rather than producing nothing and fully specialising in fruit, Agartha is going to have to produce 20 units of honey, which is going to take the global production to 60. Now, because we're in a situation in which both countries are devoting 100% of their resources to the production of either honey or fruit, for Agartha to produce 20 units of honey rather than 0, we're going to have to give up some fruit production. Now, in order to figure out how much fruit production we're going to have to give up, we have to go back to the opportunity cost of honey in Agartha. So what we determined earlier on in the question is if either of our countries are lying on our production possibility frontiers, i.e. 100% of their resources are being used in the production of either honey or fruit, in Agartha, if we want to increase our honey production by 1 unit, we're going to have to give up or sacrifice 2 units of fruit production. So to increase our honey production by 20 units, we're going to have to give up 2 times 20 units of fruit production. So in order to increase our honey production by 20 units in Agartha, we're going to have to give up 40 units of fruit production in Agartha, which will take our global fruit production to 120 units. So it's clear that our global production of honey has been maintained at 60 units. However, although Agartha has had to produce both units rather than fully specialising in the production of fruit, we've still been able to increase global production of fruit from 90 to 120 units, which means in a material sense, both of these countries are going to be better off. But we're not finished yet. Thul's fruit production prior to specialisation was 10 units. It's now 0 units, which means Thul is going to have to trade with Agartha to increase its ability to consume fruit to at least 10. And alternatively, Agartha's pre-specialisation honey production was 40 units, and now they only have the ability to consume 20 units of honey. So Agartha is going to have to trade with Thul to increase its ability to consume honey to 40 units. So if Agartha is going to want to buy 20 units of honey off Thul, the current terms of trade is going to require it to pay Thul 20 units of fruit. So although both countries remain at their pre-specialisation consumption levels of honey, both Thul and Agartha have experienced material gains in their population's ability to consume fruit, Thul going from 10 to 20 and Agartha going from 80 to 100. So finally, because both countries' production possibilities in honey and fruit have either been maintained or increased, they're both going to benefit from either the specialisation or partial specialisation in the production of a product in which they have comparative advantage and then trading any excess product that they have with the other country. So finally, because the consumption possibilities of both honey and fruit have either been maintained or increased in both countries, their populations will enjoy an increase in their material standards of living, which means that both countries can gain from the specialisation in the product where they have a comparative advantage in its production and trading with the other country, even if one country has an absolute advantage in the production of both products.